Do 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 do. Welcome to the Red Bean Podcast, the New Orleans edition. This is your host, Mr. Toad.
And I'm Dr. Frog.
We're going to be talking about the movie Backdraft, 1991. It's a movie about Chicago firefighters, and it's about two brothers going at it. What were your thoughts about this interesting movie?
Yeah, this movie was a bit of a roller coaster. Awesome action scenes. I loved it a lot. The fire was almost an antagonist in character of its own.
Sure.
And I really like that it showed you the progression and character growth of one of the Baldwin brothers, who was playing a character who you see as a little kid go through some trauma, losing their parent, being a firefighter, and then is growing into becoming a firefighter as an adult. And there was a lot of intense scenes. It was a really good drama, and I think showing the family conflict was really at the heart of
the brothers fighting each other.
Yeah.
So intense. Let me just go over a quick synopsis of the story. We have Chicago firefighter brothers Stephen, who was played by Kurt Russell, did a wonderful job,
Oh my gosh.
and Brian, William Baldwin, have been rivals since childhood. Brian, struggling to prove himself, transfers to the arson unit. There he aids Don, who's played by Robert De Niro, in his investigation in a spat of fires involving oxygen-induced infernos called backdrafts. But when a conspiracy implicating a crooked politician and an arsonist leads Brian back to Stephen, he's forced to overcome his brotherly competitiveness in order to crack this case.
Yeah.
So we're in almost like a action-packed mystery detective drama between two brothers, kind of trying to prove the younger brother trying to prove himself to the older brother. What were your thoughts about Kurt Russell in this film?
Well, he did a great job. Kurt Russell, being the older brother, nicknamed Bull on the team, he wasn't afraid of the fire. He dove in, and he seemed to have that, you do what needs to get done. You know, he saved a child in one scene. He was a little bit reckless, and he didn't wear a mask when everyone else was. Now, some of that, I think, was, it kind of reminded me of Han Solo a little bit reckless, not following the rules all the time or procedures, but was a great leader, maybe through demonstrating. And sometimes stuff like not wearing the mask, I think how much is wanting to show the face of your actor. You don't want everyone in unrecognizable gear being safe and protected. But at the same time, it was sort of the hero figure that the younger brother looked up to. But I think also what goes throughout this is there's a lot of dysfunction. There seemed to be a dysfunctional marriage and co-parenting arrangement as there were fights breaking out at different venues.
I loved it when the two brothers started getting into a fist fight and everyone's like trying to break it up, all the firefighters.
Yeah.
Oh man, we got to break this up.
The McCaffrey brothers.
Yeah, McCaffrey brothers. They're at it again. Oh, geez. Well, I think what was interesting was this film was kind of presented in believing that the two firefighters was a part of an Engine 17. This is a Chicago Fire Department, the CFD. As you can tell, these are two brothers, Bull McAfee, who is the lieutenant, goes by the name Lieutenant Stephen McAfee. The elder's experience, while Brian has labored in his brother's shadows. Mm-hmm. One of the things I liked about this was how Brian was trying to prove himself to his older brother that he is capable to do this kind of work. I think when I was looking at you when we were watching the film, one of the things I've always been told or I've heard is that when you think about masculine films, there's not a lot of them.
A representation
of masculinity. And I think this is a good form of masculinity. One, it was showing two brothers kind of going at it back and forth. And two, towards the end of the movie, the younger brother kind of earns the respect of the older brother. And one thing
that's my brother.
He's my brother. Look at that. He's doing a good. He's really impressed with him, and I really thought that was
doing the fire with the water. He learned the Pokemon elements of water beating fire.
You got to do that Blastoids, man.
When you don't have a Blastoise around, you TM yourself and you hydro pump.
Never forget your Pokeball, but if you're forgetting your Pokeball, make sure you don't forget your fire hose.
Yeah.
One of the things I did like about the movie was that during the film, Brian witnesses the death of his firefighter father, Captain Dennis McAfee, while accompanying him on the call. The longest serving of all the men at the Engine 17, John Axe served under the McAfee's father and was like an uncle to the boys when their father died. This grows Stephen's unorthodox methods and disregard for safety procedures, as does Stephen's wife, Helen, who separated from Stephen to protect herself and their son, Sean, from the risks he was taking. So one of the things that I kind of like how they show Stephen is that the older brother, Lieutenant Stephen McAfee, he's kind of a loose cannon. Did you feel like he was a loose cannon in the film a little bit?
Yeah, Stephen was a little bit. He was a little bit. Had some resentment build up. It looked like, in terms of the younger brother getting the attention from the Life magazine photo that was taken, and some of the other stuff. You know, I get the feeling that this fire department didn't have a robust HR because of how many fights were breaking out, and
there's too much arm wrestling going on for HR. Come on.
Yeah.
But I did like this idea, like I was saying before. You know, when you think about masculine films, really when you think about it is we have movies like The Dead Poets Society and Fight Club. But you know what? I feel some Die Hard in there, but you know what? I can put Backdraft in that.
I'll put that in there, yeah. I'll put that alongside Blade Runner, some, a lot of night scenes fighting fires, some great explosions. It's a drama, but it also has a lot of elements of an action film.
One of the things I did like about it, too, was this idea of the detective. It kind of had a noir feel to it. When Inspector Donald Shadow Remgale, a dedicated arson investigator and veteran firefighter, is called in because some recent explosive fires resembles those set by pyromaniac Ronald Bartel, who's been in prison for years, Brian transfers to become Remgale's assistant after an argument with Stephen. Remgale manipulates Bartel's obsession with fire to ensure his annual parole application is rejected. It is revealed during an investigation that the Chicago City Council, Alderman Marty Swartzen, has supported budget cuts to the CFD. Mm-hmm. Contractors have paid him off to shut down firehouses so they could be converted into community centers. While the contractor is receiving contracts for the construction, Brian rekindles a relationship with Jennifer Vatis and A.2 Swarovski. Mm-hmm. So that was that whole scene where that younger woman was kind of coming on to our younger brother in the story.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. And one of the things I like this idea is that you have Chicago politics. They don't call this place the Windy City for nothing. Yes, you can get your face burned by the wind over there. But two, you can also get burned by the politics.
There's a lot of fire references around Chicago. There's the Great Fire, the Great Chicago Fire, which of course lasted a long time and burned for a while. And then you also have their MLS team, the Chicago Fire, probably an homage to that. And I think Backdraft is right up there with having a fire film in Chicago. The Great Fire, Chicago is, you probably know more about it than I do.
And it looks like the Great Chicago Fire of 1871, a devastating conflict, was a fire that started on October 8th to the 10th, 1871.
See, I knew I mentioned
a large portion of Chicago.
Large portion, I knew it lasted 3 days. But
approximately 300 people died, and more than 100,000 people were left homeless, which is about 31% of the Chicago population at the time.
Wow.
The fire destroyed roughly 3.3 square miles of the city, including over 17,000 structures and the central business district. Yeah. The fire caused an estimated $222 million in damages, which is roughly $5 billion in 2021 in adjusted.
That's amazing. I felt like this whole film was just a salute to that and the 1.2 million firefighters back in 1991 that were active in the U.S.
Back to the story. When Engine 17 answers a call in a high-rise, Stephen urges them to move in quickly, despite the advice to wait for backup. Brian's friend and fellow trainee Tim Camazio opens a door, triggering a backdraft. Mm-hmm. What I think is so interesting about this aspect of the backdraft is just how deadly it can be.
Oh, yeah. And it builds up, and you kind of, you saw it when
that burst, that fiery ball,
but you saw it sort of stretching the door, and it gave an almost animal-like creature to the fire, the way it moved and where it went.
It was like the fire was breathing.
Yeah,
you could feel the doors kind of moving.
It really personified it completely and gave it noises and howls and things like this. And it is about kind of confronting that animal. But one thing about De Niro's character in the you mentioned the sort of noir detective elements too. He kind of reminded me of Peter Falk back from 1984's Columbo, because he sort of was silent, and it's an example of less is more. It showed him checking the edges of doors, sniffing things, and you could tell he had a history with fire from the burns on him. And there was just an excellent job of this mystery that our new character, we didn't know what was going on, and seeing that through, was it William's view?
I believe it was William Baldwin who is Brian
McCaffrey,
the younger brother.
Yeah, Brian McCaffrey. Yeah,
Brian.
And maybe being a younger brother helped him in that role, but seeing it through his eyes, I think was a great character to choose for this storytelling. Because if it were me, I was thinking, why not go through De Niro's character and have the whole story centered on the investigation? I was almost surprised that the investigative element was the real story.
Yeah,
and we were just on the edges of it, the periphery of it, with this newer firefighter dealing with impostor syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
He had doubts about whether or not he could be effective at the job.
Yeah.
And, just like anyone would when they're new on a job, am I, can I really hang with the other firefighters? But then also dealing with the trauma of loss.
Of the father being killed.
It really is. It's almost a coming of age story.
One of the things I did like about Brian McCaffrey's character, the younger brother, I liked him because he was open to listening. Mm-hmm. I kind of felt like Kurt Russell, who played Stephen McCaffrey, the older brother, that guy was not going to listen anyway. I feel like he was just like, he only had one speed, which was go. And I can kind of see why his previous relationship with his wife didn't work out, because she kind of saw him as a reckless maniac. But in some ways, I could tell that Stephen McCaffrey was dealing with a lot of trauma from dealing with the father passing. Maybe because he was older and he kind of knew the father better than maybe Brian McCaffrey. He was dealing with a lot of post-traumatic stress disorders.
Maybe one way of him dealing with it was to throw himself in those dangerous scenarios. I would wonder, if I was Stephen's therapist, though, was that anger and resentment from the childhood? I wonder what role that played in the relationship. Was he always that intense, or was that something that developed after the separation and those sorts of things? And also, we don't necessarily see him. We see him living in a boat.
Yeah.
Probably not shared co-parenting. He's probably the weekend dad, the once-a-month weekend dad that shows up, kind of.
He's doing more like the Blade thing, where it's like you live in the garage, but you live in like a little hut above the garage, but you're like really in a garage.
But you didn't see the kid crashing in the boat half the time.
No, I don't think
this isn't like a Wednesday through Saturday arrangement or something.
Yeah, this is not visitations are not welcome at the boat.
Yeah.
The boat that's still stuck at the boatyard. One thing I did think was interesting in the story was Brian's friend and fellow trainee, Tim Kaminsky, opens a door triggering a backdraft. His face is burned beyond recognition, and he barely survives. Adox and Brian both condemn Stephen for what happened, though experiments later, Remgale concludes that whoever causing the fires doesn't want the fires to spread, hence the backdraft. Remgale and Brian go to Swirsky's home to confront him after learning of his connection to the 3 backdraft victims. Alan Seagrave and Donald Cosgrove and Jeffrey Holcomb interrupt a masked man about to set the residence on fire. The man attacks them with a flashlight, but is burned on his shoulder by an electrical socket. Remgale saves Brian and Swirsky from the house, but is injured in an explosion in his hospital bed. Remgale tells Brian to revisit Bartell, who helps Brian realize that only a firefighter would be so careful as to not let backdraft fires rage out of control.
Yeah.
Which this was something that I didn't actually catch on until later on in the film, was whoever this arsonist is, one, we know from this description they had a slight burn on their shoulder.
Yes.
2, we know that this person must have some type of knowledge about the chemicals used to create a fire. What did your thoughts, what did you think about how Brian McAfee was trying to figure out who is the arsonist?
I think his realization came at my realization time when they were interviewing Ronald. And, you know, which, by the way, wonderful acting for someone who's institutionalized.
Donald Sutherland did a
great job with that. And
excellent.
You know, when he said, well, it has to be someone who knows a lot about fires.
Yeah.
And is close to the chemicals, but doesn't like fire because it's not going to let it go. It's going to stop it from spreading.
That's what's interesting. He
got into the psychology of the arsonist. He knows what the arsonist is thinking and what the
arsonist doesn't want the fire to spread, but they want to make it so that it's more likely to create a backdraft.
Yeah, and then you find out later the motivation for that. But it really surprised me because that when I was along for the roller coaster, I was just paying attention to each scene from the rookie's perspective, thinking, okay, how are you going to survive and put out the fire? I didn't even think about the politics or fraud in the background.
I'm going to give a quick synopsis in case our audience is not familiar with the concept of backdraft.
Yeah.
Backdraft is when there's smoke or explosion is the abrupt burning of superheated gases in a fire caused when oxygen rapidly enters a hot oxygen depleted environment. For example, when a window or door to an enclosed space is open or broken, backdrafts are typically seen as a blast of smoke or flame out of an opening of a building. Backdrafts present a serious threat to firefighters. There's some debate concerning whether backdrafts should be considered a type of flashover. So what it is that this room is deprived of oxygen. All of a sudden, maybe someone opens the door, breaks a window, and a rapid amount of oxygen enters this area.
Yeah.
Then it creates this explosion because it's almost like the fire is because one of the elements of creating a fire, you need oxygen. You need some type of fuel. And in the appropriate environment, and then boom, you got it. And it ignites. So that's one of the causes of a backdraft is this idea of rapid oxygen entering in an environment that does not have the oxygen, and it causes this rapid explosion.
To create this sort of trap, like we saw with opening the door and then
all of a sudden, boom, like flame set.
Which is a great way to set up a sort of crime trap if you're not looking to spread the fire, but you're looking to sort of surprise.
One of the things I did think back to the plot of the story is Brian suspects Stephen, his older brother, but spots a burn in the shape of an electrical socket on Acox, who plays as Axe.
Axe is the nickname.
Yep, Axe is the nickname. He reveals his suspicion to Stephen just before an alarm. When Brian realizes Axe has heard their exchange, he jumps aboard Truck 46 after borrowing some turnout gear. On the way to the fire, their truck crashes after dodging a taxi.
So that's what it was. They dodged a taxi and flipped over. I didn't quite get it besides setting up, they're going to show up later than the other truck. Maybe that's how it happened.
I think there was like a time of delay, and it kind of shows that the younger brother was like, I need to get to this fire. I need to confront Axe to see if is Axe really the arsonist.
Yeah.
Because one of the things I did like about this film, too, was that how it showed Brian McAfee showing up to Kurt Russell, Stephen McAfee's boat and finding those chemicals. And at that time, did you think Stephen McAfee could have been the arsonist?
I thought, or I thought it was a group endeavor. I didn't think it was one person. I thought it might have been a group of people involved in it.
Yeah.
But again, because I didn't even consider that until, I got it. Okay, there's a serial arsonist around. I thought it was just, you get someone with a mask who is introduced later at the end, but until that Ronald interview, I really didn't. I thought it might have been like a Baldwin versus the Department thing instead of what it turned out to be.
What I did think was I didn't think Stephen McAfee was going to be the arsonist. And the only reason I said I didn't think he was at the time when I was watching the film before we got to the end and we found out who really the arsonist was.
Sure.
Spoiler alert, in case you're wondering who that is, I would probably watch the movie and then come back here and listen. So timestamp it here or put a pause, go watch the movie, then come back.
There you go.
Okay,
and then like and subscribe as well.
Exactly. And now you're back. Now you're back.
Yeah.
And now we're ready to get into. It turns out that Stephen McAfee is not the arsonist.
There we go.
Oh my God.
He is not the father. I mean, the arsonist.
He's not the father. He's the father, but he's just not the arsonist in the story. And you know the reason I didn't think he was going to be the arsonist? He was too good at running up and putting the fire out. I really think he would find it distasteful to start a fire. I feel like he was too passionate of a firefighter.
Although my thought was maybe that's why he's so reckless, because he understands the way he set it up. If he set it up, I was thinking, oh, that's why he ran in, because he knew it wouldn't spread because of how he set up the fire. So I thought there was something where it was like, that's why he's being reckless, because he isn't worried because he knows what the fire is going to do.
You see, the other aspect of it was he's living on a boat, and for some reason,
on the boat.
And when I saw all the canisters there, I kind of kept thinking, like, is he painting the boat? Does he need paint thinner? I don't know.
I'm wondering.
That's kind of where I was going at.
The local taverns in Chicago, he could always tell people, "Hey, I got a boat."
Hey, I live in a boat, you know.
Well, I wouldn't say I live in the boat.
Technically, he lives in the boat.
You got a boat. You
got the boat.
Although, what are you gonna do? Go out on Lake Michigan when it's like negative. So negative.
Hey man, ice fishing. Hey, come on. Hey, there might be some good fishing.
I've seen the buoys. I spent some time in Chicago, and the buoys don't go out that far from Lake Michigan. Swim out there, but no, boating is great.
We'll go back to the story here. Stephen confronts Axe about the backdraft during a multi-alarm fire at a chemical plant. Axe admits that he set the fires to kill Swirsky associates because Swirsky's benefit from firefighters' death and closed down the firehouse. When an explosion destroys the catwalk they're on, Stephen grabs Axe's hand while hanging on to the remains of the catwalk. Stephen refuses Axe's advice to let go of him and loses his grip on the catwalk.
Oh, yeah.
Stephen lands on the lower catwalk, but Axe dies when he falls into the fire. Brian bravely battles the fire, allowing two firefighters to reach Stephen and carry him to safety. Stephen dies with Brian by his side on the way to the hospital, with his final request being that Brian not reveal Axe to be the perpetrator, which I think that speaks volumes about Brian's respecting Stephen on saying, hey, this was not... Axe shouldn't be. His name shouldn't be tarnished.
After the boss, because even Axe said, "There's nothing I could do." He was saying,
"He's like, I have to do what the
mayor
tells me."
Yeah,
I have
so
to do what the mayor tells me.
This reminds you of that BP oil spill. It's like, Halliburton making the holes for. Halliburton was in charge of the hull contracts from Transocean, but BP was the biggest pockets that wanted the ships to transfer. So who are you going to sue when there's the big oil spill? Usually the one with the biggest pockets.
That's right.
So sometimes it's like, hey, let's see how deep this corruption goes, and they interrupted a news conference and threw some documents down and asked him a hardball question in the middle of a press conference.
That's right at the end.
Which is great for movies, but it's kind of rude if you think about it,
I don't know. A lot of people died, so maybe, that was kind of rude, too.
So if you're ever holding a news conference, make sure that there's no large corruption thing that someone could throw a document at you.
I will say this, though. The scene of Brian McAfee surrounded by fire. Like, remember the fire coming from the ground, and it was like the floor was on fire. He was spraying the water, and he was surrounded by flames, and he's shooting the water, and at one point he takes the fire extinguisher, breaks the handle, he throws it like a grenade, and it blows up, and it spreads everywhere.
Just to clear around some space to grab the hose and fight off the flame.
Yeah.
Which I love the depiction of flames crawling across the floor and across the ceiling. If I could have a screensaver for my computer, it would just be a slow-mo version of fire crawling across the... It's beautiful. But, I loved Hans Zimmer's compositions for these. Really brought out the tension and everything and the drama of it. But I'll tell you what, though, I wouldn't have minded some Terminator music, because it seems like the end of all the Terminators, first and second, it's going to be it's going to be a warehouse.
Yep.
There's going to be some fighting, and there's going to be some intense explosions.
It turns out Axe is not really a senior firefighter. He's actually
he's a T-2000.
He's a T-800 or the T-900.
T-1000 was the, I think.
Well, there's T-800 and then there's T-1000, but I think he's going to be the T-900. So the T-900, he doesn't have a gun, nor does he actually work for Cyberdyne. But what he does is he does start fires during the 1990s in Chicago.
William Baldwin, I would really like to see that impression of Kyle Reese from William Baldwin. You know, the fire's not going to stop. It's going to hunt you down. There's nothing you can do to stop it.
Unless you get Squirtle.
It'll keep going. Yeah. Well, yeah, bring all your water Pokemon to the fire gym.
That's right. You got to bring them all to the fire gym. One thing I would say right at the end is after the funeral for Stephen and, of course, Axe, Brian and Remgale, with the help of the police, interrupt Swirsky, the mayor, at a press conference. Remgale questions Swirsky on a fake manpower study that led to the deaths of several firemen, including Stephen and Axe. They also stated that Swirsky engineered the downsizing of the Chicago Fire Department, destroying Swirsky's mayoral ambitions. Brian continues as a firefighter, carrying on his family's firefighting tradition despite the loss of his father and brother.
And, you know, it's not Stephen. What was the other guy's name? Billy or something? The William Baldwin's character. It's not Stephen. It's...
they have Brian McAfee,
Brian
and then, of course, you have Stephen McAfee.
Oh, is it McAfee or McCaffrey? I thought there was
McCaffrey.
Yeah, there's an R in there. McCaffrey.
You got some Irish names in this place.
There we go.
There.
But basically what I was wondering is, he got to do that line where he's like, do you see that in the corner of your eye? That's your career disappearing. And it's like, what a cool thing for a movie.
Man, what?
Like, when you catch it's like if Batman catches the bad guy saying, justice was served this day. It was one of those cool lines at the end. Still, maybe not the best thing to say in front of all the cameras. It could be used in court as... Yeah, so much of it was perfect. It was too perfect.
This is the 1990s. This is the land. This is the time where you had the one-liners. They don't do that anymore.
I mean, Major League came out in, 1997? So, if you can have dreams happen, like the Indians winning the World Series, then maybe in Backdraft you can have that cool line as you catch the mayor in some corruption.
The runtime for this film was 137 minutes. The release date was May 24th, 1991. The budget was $40 million. Could you imagine? You couldn't even make a movie like this for $40 million. Box office, it made $152 million.
Everyone saw this. This was it in the summer?
Great.
Yeah, it was late May. So this is the blockbuster of the year.
Oh, and yeah.
You gotta think, if this is 91, okay, so what? 12 Monkeys came out in 88. So this is pre-Die Hard, 1992, pre-Jurassic Park. Pre-Titanic, so you're looking at a reasonable runtime.
Yep.
It was before companies started making 3+ hour movies.
Yep, this is
a great 2-hour.
Yeah, the movie was about 137 minutes, and it was directed by Ron Howard.
Ron Howard, oh boy. It made me want to watch American Graffiti again after this.
I don't know about you, but I'm going to want to rewatch some Happy Days.
I don't know about that. I'm going to have to...
Maybe you'll skip that one. One of the things I did think was interesting for Brian McAfee, the runner-up for casting was Robert Downey Jr. He was also considered audition for the role. Brad Pitt.
Brad Pitt was considered.
Yeah, he was considered for Brian McAfee, and then Keanu Reeves was also considered for.
Didn't I say that for Brian McAfee? I said they should have had. I'd like to see Keanu Reeves do this. In one of the scenes, randomly early, I said I could picture Keanu Reeves doing that.
He's like, oh my gosh. Yeah,
he had this bewildered look, and then he walks into the next room, and I'm like, man, that's got to be Keanu Reeves. I mean, if you go back to the Replicants or something, right?
One thing I would say, at least about William Baldwin, he had the greatest expression towards the end of the film, where he's kind of looking out the window, and he had this look of being like, I've been through so much, but I still want to keep trying again.
Yeah.
And I think he had that kind of beaten, destroyed look. The other person who was also considered for Brian McAfee was Val Kilmer.
Yeah, Val Kilmer. That surprised me.
That was very interesting.
Maverick was, or no, he was. I think he was Maverick, wasn't he? Or no, in Goose Maverick, Ace. I can't remember which one he was. In was he the Iceman? Yeah.
Yes, he was the Iceman.
Iceman.
Or Top Gun.
Maverick was Tom Cruise, of course. hey, they're mad.
No, they're both in the movie.
Well, yeah, but he was in the movie for most of the movie. For over half of the movie, Val Kilmer was in it.
All I can say is I kind of wish they would have shown the actual fight scene between Tom Cruise and Val Kilmer.
Imagine the Top Gun soundtrack in Backdraft.
And it's like the whole movie's all about like
flock of seagulls playing while the fire truck goes down the.
And it's like the whole movie is all about how these like jets are having this crazy like problem with the boost, like the turbine engine just keeps hurling flames on people. The danger zone. Oh no, someone's on fire.
Yeah,
danger zone. Oh my gosh, there's another one in danger zone.
Some sirens flashing while you spray walk.
Yeah, De Niro coming in with a cigarette in his mouth, like, oh man, you guys got to cut it out with these fireballs.
Right. So you know what? I mean, I'll make this comment about AI, and maybe AI is a danger for creatives and having human expression through the artwork. But one thing they might be really cool at is if you give them 3 movies. And you say combine the music of this movie with the direction style of this movie with the content story of this other movie, you get some horrific melding of several films together. It would be hilarious.
Well, they did also make, just to let everybody know, there is a Backdraft 2, and it was direct-to-video. So
direct-to-video.
Yeah, that may not be one to really...
Maybe they shouldn't have opened the door with that Backdraft.
It's a little too much oxygen for Mike.
It was too explosive. It went straight to video. Skipped over the movie theaters.
It was well done.
It was
very
well done.
Yeah.
They overcooked the ratings on that.
It was just a little too explosive for my taste.
Oh my gosh. There's not enough oxygen to laugh at those puns.
One of the things I would say was that actors in this film did a wonderful job.
Oh my goodness, yes.
I think William Baldwin playing Brian McAfee, excellent actor. Kurt Russell was Stephen McAfee. I love that Kurt Russell was so over the edge, which was great. But Donald Sutherland, I like that. He kind of played like Hannibal Lecter in this movie in some ways. If you think about it, he's like the weird guy in the prison, and they're trying to get some information. You have Robert De Niro.
Excellent scene.
Yep. And you have Robert De Niro being like the Columbo kind of like, he's kind of on the edge. You can kind of tell he's an detective.
You can tell things are going through his mind as he's looking. You can tell there's years of experience behind that.
Then, of course, Scott Glenn was Axe in the film, the main bad guy. But then again, was he really the bad guy? I feel like he was kind of forced into a situation.
He worked with their father, the McCaffrey's father. He was a cog, a part of the system there.
I think Jason Leah, who played Jennifer Vodkis in the film, I think she could have been...
I thought she would be more relevant.
I thought she was kind of like a side... But there's too many characters
going on. Let's be honest. The somber ending with the whole him becoming an okay firefighter and helping the rookie along, that's what the real story was about. I think if there was someone jumping in his arms and them kissing at the end and then they have a family or something, it probably wouldn't have hit the right tone.
Yeah, it could have been a little tone deaf, after all the deaths and everything. And I did think it was interesting. They had Clint Howard in the film. He kind of plays these odd characters in films, but it was kind of neat to see him in the film as well.
Yeah, Clint Howard, yeah.
Yep. And overall, I guess we got to give this movie a rating. So at a scale 1 to 10, 1 not being very good, 10 being awesome, what would you give it, Dr. Frog?
Sure. I would give this a 7.5.
Okay.
Which is, if 7's average, I would say... above average film, something that I could watch again. It's very exciting. Love the acting performances. Is it something that I'm going to go to regularly or want to rewatch again this year? Well, if I'm showing someone it, maybe, but I think it was a great story. It was a great, just a little over 2 hours. What was it, like 2 hours 15 minutes or something? I'm glad I watched it again. I'd only seen parts of this movie, so this was my first time viewing it completely. And I think that the pacing of the story was a bit disjointed. I wasn't sure whether to focus on the family conflict or whether it was about the growth and development. And then there was this corruption thing added later. I felt like there were several stories that were kind of bouncing into each other, and then they kind of quickly wrapped it up in the last 15 minutes.
This is definitely like one of these movies that's like a layered cake.
Yes.
You got the brothers punching each other. That's one aspect of the film. Yeah. You have the second aspect of like crazy fires, which I really enjoyed about this film. Like, I really felt like I was a firefighter with these guys.
Oh, yeah.
Going into a room, there's fires everywhere. We have axes. They had chainsaws trying to open up these areas. The aspect that I really enjoyed a lot was how the younger brother, Brian McAfee, basically he'd save the mannequin, and then people were kind of giving, kind of egging him on that one.
The Shinji before Evangelion in '94.
That's right, but this
get in the fire, Shinji.
He got in the fire though. That's the
he eventually got in the fire. To be fair, Shinji eventually got in the.
He got into the robot as well.
Eventually, everyone gets in the robot if you can.
Yes. I guess I'll be giving my rating now.
Yeah.
I would probably give this movie an 8 out of 10. And the reason why I give this an 8 out of 10, I love the story take on this story about these brothers being firefighters, the conflict between two of them. That kept me motivated. I like this idea. I felt like I was watching like 4 movies at the same time, though.
Exactly. That's several different storylines. The characters were so well developed that I felt like each of them could have had their own movie.
I kind of feel like there could have been a Backdraft 1, 2, and 3, and a 4.
You know,
like first movie, they're all fighting each other and they're fighting the fires, and then they end up building a stronger bond with each other. That could have been movie 1. Movie 2 could have been him becoming a senior in the force, becoming the arson investigator. That could have been a whole other movie.
A whole other thing.
Then the third movie could have been like the brother dies and he has to take on being a lieutenant. And then the fourth one, him being attacking the bear.
The prequel, or the prequel no one watches of The Father is just a normal firefighter movie.
It could have just been.
Only the diehard fans really watch that one. You know, this reminds me of something like maybe was it 1972 or it's either 72 or 74 or 76. Orson Scott Card's famous sci-fi novel Ender's Game.
Oh yes.
You know, there was the quadrilogy, right? Because you had, you know, but you also had books like Ender's Shadow, which is Ender's Game.
Speaker of the Dead.
Well, Speaker of the Dead was the second book. That was the
second
sequel.
one. Yeah.
So there was the 4 books in that, but there was also Ender's Shadow, which is Ender's Game from Bean's perspective during the same time.
Okay.
And then there's Shadow of the Hedgemon, which was Peter's perspective during it. Yeah. So, you know, we could have done a sort of, maybe I go straight to system building, but there was so much in this story. I think the pacing, it could have been unpacked in these multiple stories. You brought up a great point with the multiple threads going.
I felt like it was just like there was so much going on in the film.
Yes.
And it was kind of, that at one point I was kind of like, as I was watching, I was like, okay, so who's the arsonist here? You know, it kind of seemed like another plot. I kind of felt like in the writings room or whatever they were doing when they were making this film, they were kind of like, okay, we want 2 brothers to fight each other. Check. We want crazy fires. Check. We want arsonists. Check. We want corruption with the government. Check. We have some backstabbing. Check. We got maybe a little romance going on. Check.
I think the acting carried it so much.
I think
so many great actors in the same room.
I have to say, the person that I would say who really carried this film for a long time, I think, was definitely...
I think De Niro pushed
Kurt Russell did a great job. What I loved about it was he was loud and crazy. I love that. So we had Crazy Cop, which is Kurt Russell in this movie. William Baldwin was the calm and nice cop. And then Robert De Niro was kind of like the cop that was in the background. So I kind of
the retired cop that's back on for the final gig.
He's like, oh man,
I want to retire after I catch this guy.
I try to get out of here, and they just drag me back in.
Yeah.
So I would definitely say, this is a good recommend for us.
Yeah, and I'd almost say this is almost like a police film.
You know,
it was set up like that, even though it was through the lens of firefighting.
For firefighting, but it was kind of like
a cop movie. Could have easily been a crime movie. Yeah,
this could have been easily.
This is technically a crime movie. It's about the crime of arson.
That and all those other elements within the story, and I think I would have preferred. I think if they would have made this a little cleaner, maybe they could have gotten rid of the lady that loves stuff, because I felt like that.
Well, that's what distracted me, because I was waiting for the through thread. I was waiting for the personal development of Baldwin in not just his career growth, but also his personality growth, and not, you know, he overcame impostor syndrome, but he still didn't, you know, have that confidence until the very last scene.
And you can kind of tell that Baldwin's character, when he confronted his brother, older brother,
Yes.
Kurt Russell, who played in the movie, of course, Stephen McAfee, when he confronted him on the boat, and McAfee, the older brother, started talking about his relationship with his father and how it was strained and how it was difficult for him. And he could tell that Baldwin I could see through the acting was so good. Like, he could really tell that he was like, oh, my older brother has been really impacted negatively by what's happened. And this is kind of the aftermath of all this trauma and this intensity. So I would say anyone who's interested in being dragged into a flame, I would give Backdraft a thumbs up for checking it out.
Oh, yeah. No, certainly. I highly recommend.
And that will make for our review of Backdraft. If you've seen this movie, please like and subscribe and give us a comment saying, what was the part of this film that you really enjoyed? What do you have to say about it, Dr.
And if you haven't seen this movie, also like and subscribe. And make sure to go watch it.
Well, that makes for our review of Backdraft. And in any case, always make sure, if there is a fire, I would refrain from opening a window.
Check the doorknob first.
Yep, check the doorknob. And if is there a fire, you get down on the ground.
There's
and
smoke.
You crawl.
Yeah.
You always
smoke
crawl.
Rises.
Yeah, smoke rises. So
you know what? I crawl even if there's not a fire. Just be safe. And
also, make sure you change your batteries out to your fire alarms. Always make sure those are up to date, because you are the only one that can prevent.
And I'll actually shout this out. I always donate to fire departments. There's a lot of junior volunteer firefighting opportunities, and there's always ways to get involved. Sometimes they'll do raffles, different fundraisers. Reach out to your local fire department and see if it's maybe this year's a good year to donate.
And if anything, always remember that when it comes to a fire, reporting it as soon as you can to the authorities is so important. And we just want to say here at the Red Bean Podcast that Backdraft, in either case, if you're having a feud with your long-lost brother or investigating an arsonist, always remember to like and subscribe to our show.
Yeah, and, 7.5, that'd be 3 fires out of 4.
That is right. That'll make for our review of Backdraft. Have a wonderful day, and we'll talk to you soon.
Take care.